All right, in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone to FrameCast number 31, where we're talking about special people, and we're being joined by very special people. Namely, we have Drew, as always, and we also have TheLividLion right here joining us
How's it going,
tonight.
guys?
So today we're talking about TemTem. Lion, what's your history with TemTem? How did you discover the game? What do you do?
So I discovered the game actually very unfortunately right after the Kickstarter ended. So I never initially got to back it, like a good majority of people, I think. But yeah, we've been playing. I think we jumped in finally when we had the stress test, and we were live during all three of the stress tests. We enjoyed it quite a bit, and we were kind of shocked at how much that we enjoyed it. And then we've been playing it pretty much nonstop since it came out. So I think I've already got like a little bit over 120 hours or so. I know some people with way more than that. So, yeah,
What?
yeah.
Oh my god.
Seeing the suppressed look on Drew's face, I don't think you have 120 hours in it, do you?
No,
So-
I do not.
So, for those of you who don't know, TemTem is like the Kickstarter game that recently opened its doors for I think they call it early access. Is that the right
Yeah.
name
Yeah.
for it? So right now you can buy it on Steam for $30, and it's most widely known as like the indie Pokemon game, but then online. And it's like I've been playing it. Drew's been playing it. Lion has been with it like from the start after the Kickstarter ended. It's a lot of fun, I can tell you. So yeah, try it if you haven't. But today we're going to be talking about TemTem itself and can it conquer the hearts of Pokemon fans? Drew, how's your experience been so far with TemTem? How many hours are you in? 119, 118?
No, I'm like, I'm gonna be honest here. I'm gonna be brutal. I'm probably gonna piss off people. I'm only at like 5 hours, and I honestly struggle with it.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm saying it's a game that maybe I'm just too used to Pokemon. One of the biggest challenges and hurdles that I have found with TemTem is I start playing, I move 2 foot, there's another trainer there that's raring to beat me, and I'm like, oh my god, fine. And the dialogue is just like, oh, do you like waterfalls? Let's fight. I like waterfalls. Let's fight. It's like, oh, I especially like how it hits the rocks. Let's fight already. And I do want to love it. I do want to like it a lot. I think the game has lots and lots of potential. I just think as an avid Pokemon fan, it's not there yet for me.
I can see what you're saying with the dialogue. I remember going from the very first town to like the next, and me being like, "Oh yeah, nah, I can do this." I had to like go back multiple times to like go back to like my house to get my TemTems healed because there are so many bloody battles, and like you'll have like 3 different dialogue options sometimes where it's like, do you know what TemTem is good against this ability? Oh, what do you think is good against water? What do you think good is good against fire? It's like, and then you start a battle. So it takes a while. However, I have to say that with those 2 concerns, I do have to say that it's nice because most of the time in Pokemon, when you start out, you rarely have any trainers to go around. And what I most of the time used to do is, in order to like prep myself for the first gym, I would always spend hours and hours in the weeds to try and train my Pokemon. So having more trainers to battle is a good thing, and I think that the dialogue system also adds more like liveliness to the game, other than just like having people talk to you and you just sitting there like,
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's quite a bit of I mean, I'm a big fan of lore in most games. So like for me, like I don't mind all the dialogue that happens, and I actually like that I know you haven't probably gotten through, Drew, to a lot of the different farther in the games where there's actually dialogue choices that matter. So like so that when you're playing through, like if you click the wrong one, like for instance, there's a quest. I don't know if you want me to tell you like what the quest is.
Tell me.
So there's one that's called it's for a better life for Asterion, And it's like you kind of help up the family's children into get to different points in their lives, like where they want to go career wise, which is a really cool like kind of aspect. It feels more adult in terms of like a narrative. You're kind of helping these kids get to that point. And the one, he really wants to be part of like an airship. He wants to work on an airship. And when you get him on board and everything, when you go to talk to him, he tries to give you a reward saying like, I won't need my money. So here you could take, my earnings that I've saved up for this much. Well, if you take it, you don't get the other reward. So if you deny it and you say, no, kid, keep this, you're going to need it more than I will. He actually ends up giving you like almost a perfect statted Pookie. So like if you took the money, you don't get the reward. If you took the reward, you don't get the money. So there's choices like that throughout the game that if you make those, you'll miss out on certain things. So it's kind of cool.
How did you know about this?
I did not know about it. When I was playing through, it was just like a moral thing. I was like, oh, as a kid, I don't really want to take money from the kid. He might need it. So I just went, nah, I don't want it. I want to see what happened because, most people are going to choose the money because they're like, hey, I'm hurting for money. Everything's so damn expensive. Everything really is. The items in the game are super expensive right now. So, most people take the money, but I was like, what would the option be if I turned down the money? And I got a perfect stat. I was like, that's huge. How many other things in the game have these kind of choices, especially going forward? And for me, like, I really want them to, I would love for them to embrace that kind of thing, making more incentives to actually reading the dialogue and paying attention to things. So, and I've noticed there's a lot more like adult themes and stuff in there. Like, when you get to that first town and they're telling you there's like, oh, when you stop back through, let's go have a drink. Like you don't experience those kind of dialogue kind of options in like a normal Pokemon game. You know what I mean? Because those are it's more gauged towards kids and stuff like that. Whereas this one, I see that their narratives are leaning more towards like environmentalism and issues that are on the horizon. With like cultures and societies and stuff like that. There's like nuances in there. So for me, I've actually enjoyed a lot of the narrative.
Yeah. So.
Go on.
Okay. So first of all, when it comes to like it being less focused towards the kids, I have to say I'm very disappointed that the professor is not named after a tree, as far as I believe. That was a bit of a disappointment. But no, like I really think that if done right, the dialogue and the dialogue options can really elevate the involvement in the lore of what goes around. Like I remember I used to go for Pokemon games trying to like talk to every single one of the people, and then you'd find it like the first 2 towns would just be filled with people that would say nothing but this potion is used for this. Use your running shoes to sprint. I'm like, yeah, normal people don't talk like that. You're no normal people. However, when you put in a choice option and then the choices don't lead to anything, then it's like, well, why is this here? Why do we even bother? So I think that it's really important that we have these results to it. And I think it's fine if in the beginning you don't have like a lot of like effect on them because you're just still trying to figure out the game. But if in quest like it really leads to different outcomes, that's really cool. I like that. And
I think one of the problems I have with some of the dialogue is the fact that it's so jarring. I don't know if Lion, you've played either of the latest 2 Pokemon games.
No, I haven't played the latest 2. I follow them, but I haven't played the latest 2. I played the ones before that, like Sun and Moon and stuff like that.
So my biggest problems with the latest Pokemon games is literally probably the same problem I have with TemTem. Is the fact that I'm trying to go at my pace, at my speed. I'm trying to hit the hurdles at my running speed or whatever. And then all of a sudden, bam, I'm stopped. And here, have some pointless, needless dialogue. I won't let you actually do anything until I finish showing you this picture on a wall. I'm like, I don't care about your bloody picture on the wall. Just show me the thing. And
just fight me already. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically. And I think potentially this is maybe provoking negative thought in TemTem. The negative reaction I'm having towards what I experienced in Pokemon is potentially showing itself in TemTem. The fact that I don't want to travel 5 foot and then fight another trainer battle, only to have to go back to the town to heal up my TemTem. Like, I've gotten to the first cave on the first island, the big cave on the first island. So I'm not that far into the game, but I do know about the revival jiggers and all that stuff. I feel the need to go back and revive my TemTem or heal my TemTem is a lot higher than anything else like in Pokemon.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
I think part of it definitely comes from like the fact that there are more trainer battles, and like I don't necessarily think, as I said before, that that's a real bad thing, because I remember really looking forward to trainer battles because they're they're really nice ways to level, and with you having like 2 Temtem that you can throw out, like leveling those Temtem up is so much better than in Pokemon. However, I can see what you're saying with like the exposition, especially when it's like an animation that you're like walking through a town, or like they're taking you along. I'm kind of wondering whether that could be because of some very like ironic turn of events, where back in the old days where you didn't have the internet, like things were poorly explained, because if you had to like read for like a whole page of text to like have someone explain something to you, you'd be bored, like you might no one read it, so they wouldn't really put in these tutorials. So people just had to figure it out, and people didn't quite like that, but they had no other options because there was no internet. And now with the internet, when everyone can figure out through just looking it up how things work, they also have higher graphics, so that instead of just like telling you it in like this little box, they can just show you around. So they make more like eloquent tutorials, where like if you grew up with Pokemon before those days, you're just used to like skip, and I'll just move along and figure it out on myself.
That's a fair point. I would definitely agree with that.
So maybe like an option to, like, I don't know, because on the one hand, I know that we often complain about games which don't really like introduce themselves properly, or like put in tutorials, because I am also a firm believer of like it should be inside the game, like the game itself should be enough to like teach you what's going on. But like, and then at the same time, like I also know that a lot of people will say if they have the option to choose or skip a tutorial, they'll often skip it. Say, like, I'm a gamer, I know how this works, and then they have no idea how it works, and they get really upset with it. So maybe like an option to like skip those things, but then again, like it's I don't know. It also gives like a little bit of character to it, and once you get through those stages, like those things will become less and less and less.
Yeah, I would say they definitely die down significantly after you get through the first island. Like I think the first island is very much catered to giving a new experience, like because there are a lot of differences in the game, and there's a lot of things that they do kind of have to show you. But you can also, in your options, disable like the tutorial pop-ups, the things that show up. But like those things are also pretty useful. Like they pop out really quick, you get a little blurb that you can read, and it shows a good visual of what what you need to do. So those are kind of nice. But yeah, you definitely have to figure your way around the areas more as you get farther into the islands. Like definitely the second and third islands become more of like, I have no idea where I'm going, I'm just going to figure this out. Whereas like the first one is very clearly like you're going in a straight path up, and that's where I need to go. You know what I mean?
So obviously on the Legion Gaming channel, you have kitty. Sorry, I didn't get distracted. Sorry. On the Legion Gaming channel, you actually have a lot of TemTem videos with your partner in crime, Kodak.
Kodiak, yeah.
And I had a point. So you've played a lot of the game. How much of the game did you have to go look up for yourself on how to do it, or versus how much did you work out for yourself firsthand?
I ran through the entire game blind.
Really?
Yeah, I ran through that's like my thing. Like whenever I play a game, I don't look up any guides or anything first and foremost. I just like power through the game, and I see what I can discover on my own. And then if I miss things, that's when I then go to like a wiki or something like that, and I see what they have, and I see like any notes that I've taken down. I compare with like what they've put down. I'm like, this is incorrect. I've definitely seen something contrary to this. So for me, I like experiencing things completely blind. So for me, like the overall experience has been very, very good figuring things out as I go. I think for the most part, I think the only big frustration to me was actually like the co-op experience, but like, we can get into that later. That's been a very sore subject for me.
Well, let's get into it now. Talk to us about it.
Yeah. So the co-op experience to me, I think could be done a lot better, because I know that this game is marketed as an MMO, And aside from the living world of all the trainers running around, which granted I really love seeing. I love seeing all these people in areas that I'm playing around because it kind of breaks up the monotony sometimes of like, grinding certain Tems out for TV stats or, trying to find this one. Like it's nice seeing other people run around you and they have like Lumas and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Like I never saw that one before. So it's a cool kind of experience. But the co-op itself, it's weird that it like limits you and your partner. Cat, what are you doing? He's like climbing into my keyboard. So like me and my partner, like we can only get you only get 3 tem each because it's it's a 2v2 battle system. You get 3, I get 3. But the problem is the experience is still not divvied up in a way that kind of makes sense. Like if you're playing by yourself, right, and you have 2 tem on the field, they get a buttload of experience. But when you play with a partner, you're only leveling 1 tem at a time on each side. You know what I mean? So like even if you have 6 that you need for the story when you're not playing with your partner, you're investing a lot more experience into one thing rather than 2. So you're kind of hampering, I think that's the word I'm looking for, your experience as you're playing through with a partner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like if you don't play exclusively together, you're gonna have problems keeping up with the levels.
Yeah, it's not beneficial in the way of you growing for the game and growing your Temtems to do it in a co-op mode because you'll only be ranking up 1 instead of 2.
Correct. And then
That's-
the other kind of issue I have real quick is you can't even just co-op and just farm separately. Like I'd love to just have like my friend in a co-op session and we're in the same area just farming battles independently. You know what I mean? Like I see what I capture, see what he captures.
Yeah.
You can't do that. If one person gets into a fight in a co-op session, wherever you are on the map, it drags your character all the way over and then starts the battle. So I don't like that aspect about the game. I think that could be vastly improved. So
No, I can agree with that. I've done a couple of co-op sessions. So now that you have said that, it's just like, yes, no, I do remember having to run across a field. Yep, with no choice. One of the thoughts I had was I feel a simple solution to the whole balancing of experience is simply, instead of actually just dumping double the amount in the TemTem you have, is to still have this principle of you divvy it up. So have it so that your first 2 TemTem still receive the bonus, even though the second one is not out.
Yeah, I think that's how it should be done as well. That was my thought as well. Because I know you do get like an experience share item towards like the end of the first island. You can go down and get that. And that does help significantly, if you're doing co-op, because then you are leveling a second tem at the same time. But for the most part, yeah, like I think an inherent experience kind of share would be super beneficial to a co-op session.
Yeah.
So one question I have, right? How much Pokemon have either of you played?
I played all the way up through, I think Black and White 2 was when I was like hardcore. Like I played all of the games. And just kind of like
I think we're losing him.
Yeah, we're losing him a little bit.
Lion?
See if he comes back.
Yeah, hopefully. Nope, I think we've potentially completely lost him.
Yeah, maybe. That doesn't happen often, that it's not you who breaks up.
Yeah, let's
see what we can do about it. Yeah, while you contact him, I've played Pokemon Pearl was like my first like series entry, and after that I started to pick up like old Game Boy games and just playing them like in class. So I've had like 3 or 4 Pokemon games which I really played like from start to end. How about you, Drew?
Oh god, I used to play a lot of the older ones. Like I remember playing Red all the way through because I started when it first came out, and I think I played a little bit of like of Silver. Then I played when Soul Silver came out. I played all of that. I'm pretty sure I played all of Ruby. But it's just like there's so many of them. It gets hard to remember. But the question I wanted to ask, and I'm kind of wanting Lion to come back.
Yeah, well, we can jump in on when he comes back, but we can continue on as well.
So the question I wanted to ask was, in the Pokemon games, how often do you turn off the battle animations?
That was an option.
Yeah.
I never did. But like I think that where you're going with this is like how long that took. Like seriously, I really enjoy hold on. Here we go. Let me adjust the thing with the finger thing. Boom, 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 boom. Here we go. How long like the animations and the like the entire like battle sequence took was so long in Pokemon. I really like how short it is in TemTem because basically what you have with Pokemon, it's like 4 lines per attack. It's like the Pokemon does the attack. It's successful. It's not very successful. It takes so bloody long. And I find the pace in TemTem way better.
So in Pokemon, you have the ability to just flat out turn off the animations. So it's just like, Pokemon does attack, enemy Pokemon does attack, and it's like super fast. That is one thing I actually genuinely miss in TemTem. So yeah, okay, TemTem's like really quick in terms of that kind of combat. Oh, we got him back. There we go.
I think I'm back. This might happen again. I don't know what they're doing with the internet. So
no, perfect.
Sorry.
Right. So I asked Michelle if he knew about the combat system in, oh gosh, what's the name of the
in Pokemon? So like you
in
can turn
Pokemon, you
off
can
animations in Pokemon.
Yeah, so you can turn off combat animations in Pokemon. Did you do that?
I did sometimes, not all the time.
Right. Okay.
I think there's
need
definitely a few games I did.
Yeah. So to me, one thing that I feel like I'm long suffering in the tooth is the fact that in TemTem it's just like, okay, yep, I've seen that before. I don't need to see it again. Can we please skip these animations? So how do you feel that this is a feature that is necessary?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a feature necessary. But I think also like we have a year left of their early access development. I'm sure that complaint will make its way very, very clearly to them.
Yeah.
I think they'll definitely implement something like that because they've been really good about like community response to things. That's the one thing I will absolutely praise those devs on, is that I've very rarely seen a community interact with their players so frequently and even so lightheartedly, even like through Twitter and stuff like that. Like I know Warframe is really good about communicating things. I know Destiny, actually, to a degree now, is very good about communicating things, even though the choices aren't always the greatest. Yeah, so like it's good to see that they're communicating with that. So I definitely think that's something that they'll implement without a doubt.
Well, I honestly find, since my latest Pokemon entry was like Pearl or something that I seriously played, like it's so much faster. It's so insanely faster. Like I really enjoyed like how fast it feels compared to like standard Pokemon, though I'd never experienced it turning off the animation, so I don't have that to compare it to. But what I do have to say when it comes to the online element to it, what you mentioned with like having all the other people running around is, I remember we had Hydroxid on the FrameCast a couple of weeks ago talking about Pokemon, about Sword and Shield, and one thing he said was like, "This feels like I'm running around in the anime," which I never felt. And like I didn't play Pokemon Sword and Shield, so when I started up Temtem, it's like, yes, I can feel this now. This feels so much more like this is your like anime story, like as you saw with the Pokemon like anime, because like you can customize your character. It looks like a character. It's not just pixels, and then instead of you just being alone in the world, you have so many more people around you, which would make sense because everyone would want to be like a Temtem trainer when you live in a world of Temtem. The only thing is that at the start when you go through like the quest motions, it's sometimes really weird when it's like, oh yeah, you are the special student from from the professor, and it's like you have 5 people clipping into you that are standing in the
Yeah.
same spot. It's like, yeah, I'm really special.
I'm so
So
special. I got 10 arms.
yeah, that's probably why. But yeah, so one question I have is, how do you feel about the longevity of TemTem? So not is it going to survive in the next 5 years time or so? I think all of us would say, yeah, it's going to be fine.
Well, I wondered, like, I've not quite figured out their monetization, the way that they monetize it. Do you have more
Yeah.
information on that?
So I think like their main goal I think is through cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the cosmetic shop as it stands, like the items in game are super expensive. You got to farm for hours to make enough money to buy one piece of those things. So I think going forward, what they're gonna do is they're gonna be like special limited run cosmetics. You know, like you get these and then they're gone, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I assume most games in that kind of genre will do. And I don't really have a problem with cosmetics being
No.
the monetized aspect of things. They did mention at some point, they did mention a line saying quality of life things, and that's if that is done wrong, that is very bad for the game,
Yeah.
extremely bad for the game. If done right, it could be good, but I don't know what that limit is within a game like this.
Yeah,
You know,
I honestly have to say, so if you want to get into this game, you pay up $30 right now on Steam, and I think it's a really fair price. And what you get then is like it's kind of short at the moment, but you get like a Pokemon-like experience, and they're building onto the content. So I
So
think that
you said short. I mean, how many hours do you have, Lion?
I have 120 hours. Like the campaign
Mhm.
alone, if you do every side quest and everything from the very beginning to the very end of where it is right now, we're talking about 50-55 hours.
Mhm.
I wouldn't count that as short.
Well, they're saying that it's short because like there's a lot of content which you can also see in the game when you're running around that is to be added. So
Yeah.
you're paying the $30. There's still more to come, which is really good. However, one thing which I really commend them on is they have this live service game actually. Like it's really weird because you're looking this through like the lens of like, oh, it's like a Pokemon game, but then with people in it, so it feels like it's just like this solid game, like this Pokemon game, but it's actually a live service game which has a $30 entry fee. And a lot of times when you look at live service games like Destiny, which recently went free to play, or like Anthem, like having an upfront price on a live service game doesn't always sit very well because live service games can't just rely on game sales alone. They also need constant monetization.
Correct.
Because let's say the entire player base buys the game in year 1 and they need to support us towards year 2, it's like where are they going to get the money from? However, they do it so right, and like I haven't felt any monetization gate at all. It doesn't feel like oh, I really need to like pay up to have an enjoyable experience. So far doing it with cosmetics is great. So like that's one thing that I was like wondering about, like how do they do it, and what you say with cosmetics. I love cosmetics for like money. It's like, yeah, sure, if you want to look great, put some money down. Like quality of life improvements.
Yeah.
Like Warframe has affinity boosters, like making sense, yeah. But like it needs to be the grind, and still needs to be like acceptable for people that don't pay.
Yeah, because the reason I worry about it is it directly affecting like the economy because they have an auction house planned for Tem House and everything. So yeah, like because right now if you ever join like the TemTem Discord or anything like that, there's a whole selling and buying area where people farm up like perfect breeds and they sell them, or they have like the smaller SV1s that they sell to things. Like it's already very hectic trying to even buy things from people in that kind of sense. So like having an auction house won't be a bad thing in my opinion. Like it's the way they want to do it. But the reason I worry about quality of life things is because that directly impacts the economy when you implement something like an auction house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
So
okay.
Auction house is an interesting topic. I think you want to touch on that.
Okay. So my question to you, all right? And oh look, going off topic. Have you ever played World of Warcraft?
yeah, but I wasn't like I played vanilla and that's it.
That's fine. I mean,
yeah.
vanilla was where it was mostly at with the auction house, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever play Diablo 3 before Reaper of Souls?
No.
Right. So the reason why auction houses worked in World of Warcraft is because you had servers of several hundred people, right? And, you know, it wasn't millions upon millions of people all in one place. The problem with a system like Diablo 3 is when there was only one auction house across the entire player base, and thus the economy was just bullshit. Because either you got truck tons of the in-game currency, so like a little gem was worth hundreds of thousands, even though it was just garbage, right? When the new expansion came out, or it was worth nothing in terms of the real money because everyone was undercutting everyone else, right?
Yeah.
My concern with not with a real money auction house. So my concern with an auction house is a similar problem. Is that if everyone is supplying stuff to a minimal demand, then the costs are going to be way, way low. But at the same time, if you're still able to just make non-stop cash, basically, if you just got infinite cash because you're able to do daily quests, or I know the second island has a system where you can just release TemTem, and the higher the level of the TemTem, the more,
The more
money
money
you
you
get.
get.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, so you can just generate income from just playing the game. It's
You
not
can.
like the real world where there's only a finite amount of cash. And this, it doesn't cost you any money to actually heal your TemTem. So you could go down the free route of, all I'm going to do is whenever I need to heal my TemTem, I'm not going to use a balm or anything like that. I'm going to go all the way back to the Pokemon Center or TemTem Center equivalent and just heal up. So you could have a situation where, this absolute garbage TemTem is worth 100,000. What's the money called?
Pansons.
Yeah. 100,000 pansons. And it's just like, but it's pure garbage. Yeah, but the economy's completely whack.
Yeah, no, I think with auction houses in games, like a lot of times the argument that's being put forward in favor of it is the enormous chaos that trade chats are. And you mentioned the Discord already. It's like people will just constantly be spamming things. We also see this in Warframe, where it's like people either like spam at the highest frequency that they can, like I'm selling this, I'm selling this, I'm selling this, or they're spamming like I'm buying this, I'm buying this, I'm buying this, and how the hell are you going to find the other person? However, I think that because there's this time investment element to it, it makes the trade worth your while in the sense of you will still have a price that like you can sell things for like it's worth the effort. Because as Drew says, like the moment that you can like throw up everything like on an auction house and you can just throw it on there and like people will just have to bid on it, it's like, yeah, if you have like basically infinite amount of supply, which like most of the things in the game will be like infinite if you have enough time spent on it. It's like, yes, like what's stopping anyone from like the millions of people that play it to just like no life, throw everything on there, and then like what will the price be? It's like the supply will be so big that like, yeah, it won't work.
So, me being a giant shit stirrer, giving you my opinion, what is your thought? Do you think that the variety of TemTem is enough that there will always be a demand for the supply? How do you think it would work out?
I mean, once the game launches, there's 161 plus TemTem. So right now they're less than half, I think, of where they want to be right now. So that's still something to be seen. They're also like as more TemTem are added, I think the pools of like the grass encounters where things currently spawn will be changed so that they accommodate more of those types. So like the ratios at which your encounter ratio will be much more drastic. So like I will say playing now is more favorable probably to you in the long run than playing later. You know what I mean? Like right now, you can really kind of find those patches of grass with 100% encounter rate on a certain temp and really farm that for like the good SVs and then breed into like a perfect and then sell the perfects. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. So I don't know. It's like because there are certain items in the game that are very rare, like telomere hacks that let you permanently increase the stat of an SB by 1. So like those are super rare, and right now you really can only find a finite amount in the game and a few occasionally when the Tem Society or the Free Tem Society has the weekly rewards. Like sometimes that's what's given for that. And even so, farming money in the current state of the game takes an ungodly long time. I'll say that. Like to get like 20,000 Pansun is probably a solid 3 to 4 hours of farming, like nonstop. Like you just focus on catch release, catch release, catch release, because they don't have their end game systems to make other forms of money at the current time, because they're planned for like mini games, and they want club battles to hold territories over dojos, and there's like a lot of stuff that they have aimed to like make income, I think, down the road, but that's not here currently. So everybody's just currently farming the most efficient spots of TemTem, and then making perfects and selling those. Like, so that's the current state. So it's really hard to weigh in to say if it'll how the auction house kind of thing will play out, because I don't really know what the supply and demand will be at that point. And especially with balance patches, a live game was going to have far more balance patches to competitive TemTem versus something like Pokemon, where they don't really push out patches that balance the Pokemon that often. You know what I mean? Whereas this, like, you might see something like every 2 weeks, every month. All of a sudden, the build that you have is kaput, and you need to go make and get another version of that same Tem with a different trait. Or if they rebalance the traits and change the way this trait works on this one, all of a sudden you need to go get a new one. So I think like the flow of how often things change, I don't think will make the auction house that bad of a thing. But I can definitely see your concerns with, whoever has invested the most amount of time and most amount of stuff to be able to flood the market at initial release. I think there's going to be an issue on the initial release. I definitely think we're going to see problems. But I think as time goes on, I think it will get better. Like, just me being an optimist, I guess. But yeah, that's how I see it in the current state.
So, core fundamental combat within TemTem. All right. Very simple. The stamina bar. I freaking love it.
Yeah.
I think it is such a vast improvement over the PP system in Pokemon. Like, it's great. But one thing I'm maybe disillusioned because, again, of Pokemon. So I keep bringing up this comparison.
It's fine. They definitely reference this game at Pokemon as their springboard. So
yeah,
that's fine.
So the one thing that I do struggle with is the near constant need to heal my TemTem, because the trainers that you're fighting against are on par. They're always on par with you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you get one trainer is like, oh yes, my TemTem is 5 levels higher than yours. Suck it.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there is any form of demoralization in the player base when they have to have this constant running back?
I can see like a more casual player being pretty annoyed with it. I play a lot of games like Dark Souls and Remnant, where I like the punishment in games where it's like really overly brutal to a degree. And like for me, I like that the trainers aren't kind of like, hey, enter a battle, spam a couple moves, move on. Like, I like that. Like when I play, I have to be like, oh, great, this is a type that I just don't have a counter to. Now I have to worry about my stamina management. Otherwise, I'm going to get absolutely punished in this match. I like that aspect of the NPCs, and it makes it every encounter kind of feels like I'm kind of worried going into, like, am I prepared enough for what I'm going to be playing against, versus, hey, I'm just going to steamroll through these trainers because my TemTem are super level. You know what I mean? Like, that's my play on it. That's how I feel about it. But I could definitely see from like a more casual aspect that people would be very disheartened by the fact, like, if they get into one battle and they are severely underleveled and they just get absolutely steamrolled, and then they lose a portion of their money, which is already finite in the beginning. You know what I mean? That's a definite concern for a more casual player, especially one that has never played even a monster catching game before. Like if this is their first foray into it, because they just don't play consoles for the most part and they play PC, and this is their first like major jump in on that point, I could see that being a concern as well. So there's both sides, and I don't really know how you cater to both sides at that point. You kind of
I think that there is worth there's a lot of worth in having more difficult content available to any player, because that like increases the longevity of the amount of time you'll spend on it, the amount of like engagement you'll get out of it. but it's only worth so much if you are anticipated for it, if you know it's coming. So like you have this weird thing which Drew mentioned before, where like in Pokemon you have far less trainers. So right now you have far more trainers, but at the same time they're also far more difficult than your trainers
Yeah.
if you come out of Pokemon. So when I feel a lot of people will be going into this thing with a reference of Pokemon, even if they've never had a Nintendo DS, which was like, well, like just look beneath your couch cushions, you'll find a Nintendo DS there. Like
Yeah,
literally
that's true.
everyone had one 10 years ago. You'd go
Mine's up on
grocery
the shelf.
shopping. Do you have one on the shelf?
Yeah, it's up on top of the shelf.
Nice. Well, like you just went grocery shopping, you came back with 2DSs. It's like, yeah, these
Yep.
things were everywhere. So I'm assuming that most people will have played it. And then like you go in and you see more trainers, like fine, but then you don't expect them to be more difficult. And I remember very clearly from like the first like time that I went from the one city to the other. It was like, oh shit, my two power TemTem are kind of dead now, and then I had like 4 others, but they didn't have any offensive abilities yet. I was like, right, fuck me, I'm gonna die. And like that realization, like I thought at the time, okay, let's see if I can like swap this around. Like, and eventually you win the battle, but I can also imagine someone like stepping in there, just being like, right, no, nope, I'm out. So it's I could have done as well with like an easier startup that you like flow into it a little bit easier. That's like, okay, well, these trainers are a little bit easier. You'll grind over them, and then like from the next town onward, it will be tougher.
So for everyone's benefit, Livid is not frozen in place. His internet connection has dropped again. Yeah, I mean, a part of me feels that because the trainers in TemTem are so much more frequent than that of Pokemon, maybe they should have the difficulty level of Pokemon. So it's more of a gradual uphill battle rather than I suppose, a Dark Souls encounter every 5 steps forward. And, it's like, what can you do? A part of me does want them to rebalance the NPC encounters, but I don't know. Livid has said that he is happy with as it is. Maybe I'm just a filthy casual. Maybe it's just a simple case that I prefer a game like this to be a smooth path forward than because like whenever I'm playing something else, most of the time I'm playing with someone else, and it doesn't matter how difficult it is because it's something that we're both experiencing. It's something that we're sharing the further forwardness, But when he brought up Remnant, I'm like, oh, but I love Remnant. I thought Remnant was brilliant. I played a lot of Remnant with Loz. And then it dawned on me, maybe it's just I'm a filthy casual when it comes to playing by myself. But when playing with other people, I prefer to have a richer experience.
Well, I'm wondering if it has to do with how. Hold on, my switching isn't. Oh, I know why my switching isn't working. Boom, boom. There we go. I'm wondering if it has to do with that Pokemon has always been on the handheld console. And why would that matter? To me, the thing with handhelds is that like I would always carry them around, and I loved just like playing with them. And then if I had to be like interrupted, I would just like close it down or turn it off, and I would be able to come back to it. So it was a more casual approach, but not so much in the sense of like, oh, I don't care, I'm just playing around, blah, blah. It's like you didn't have to be dedicated towards it for an extended period of time. Like with Warframe, if you go into a mission, like you can be 5 minutes away, but if you go into like a raid in Destiny, like that can take you 45 minutes. Like that's not the way that Pokemon is structured. The way that Pokemon was structured most of the time on these, like on the traditional games, and I think even still to this day, is that a lot of the time investment into it comes in the form of like doing a lot of battles, getting a lot of XP, like going on and on and on and catching them all, and like that's a long grind, but you can interrupt that in many different ways. So I also agree that when it comes to like a multiplayer setting where I really like where the co-op is done well, that I'm playing really together with someone, then I am more enticed to like, I sit down at my computer, I go play this thing for like an hour. But when I encounter like TemTem, I think, oh yeah, it's fun. I'll play before dinner, and then like, okay, I'll have to go now. And then when it's like when you have that approach of kind of like turning it on and off, then when you turn it on and you find like, oh shit, I'm like halfway through, but I need to go back now like two more times before I can actually reach the next city, then that becomes more of a obstruction than that it feels like flowing within the gameplay.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'd be interested to see in the future how they address it. Maybe it's just the fact that, I am a filthy casual and I don't have the temtem needed to power through these hurdles. Maybe it's a simple case of, I'm doing something fundamentally wrong because, I was impatient, got fed up with all the dialogues about, aren't Temtem amazing, and then decided, oh, I'm just gonna bugger off over here. And maybe that is something that I'm fundamentally missing.
Well, it's I'm gonna try and entertain the thought of whether this has to do with a handheld game coming to console and actually now coming to PC as a PC only game, because like I feel that handhelds aren't necessarily just game consoles that you can take on the go. I think that there is a distinct difference in like a traditional handheld game and a traditional like sit down play game. Like I think that there is also a way that like handheld games are being developed in the sense like it can be shut down, it can be like flipped up, open in any capacity. And I think that Pokemon or like Temtem clearly being like really inspired from Pokemon, I think that Pokemon was designed initially as a handheld game. Like it has been handheld until like right now. Like right now on the Switch, all of a sudden, oh, you can put it on your TV, but it's still handheld. So the game structure that you're used to is very much like very casual, and like because that's the way that the game was designed around like the system that it was designed for. But now, like this game is only out as far as right now on PC, so that makes for a more like dedicated approach to a game which was traditionally designed and built up as a more casual approach. And like I don't necessarily know, like I haven't necessarily found main differences between Temtem and Pokemon where I said, okay, this right here is a core difference where I find that this gives me reason to like take this completely differently than Pokemon in the way that I approach it as like the casual gameplay. Like there's even no like save buttons on here, so like you close it, you're out. Like you don't even need to like do the saving thing, which is really nice for like popping in and out. But because of that, like these things, which like if you're in Warframe and like you have to like go back and forth on a mission, like I think we'd love that if we actually have a mission where we have to find some cover or like have to manage our health or have to manage these things. But right now, because we're used to like the setup where it's like either you use a reusable item, no, not a reusable, a usable item, or you have to go walk all the way back. It feels counterintuitive to the things that you're used to.
No, I agree with that. I think I'd just love to hear from the rest of the community. I kind of wish that Lion was able to just hop back into the call.
Lion says, I would 100% agree with that. The always online aspect may also really turn people off from Temtem. See, like that's one thing which I've been wondering about, because I think that it adds a lot of like goodness when it comes to the liveliness of the world. So I'm liking it in that regard. It doesn't really interfere much from like your solo play. It sucks that like I can't really interact with trainers.
I disagree with that. I do feel it interrupts with the solo play because if you have to queue up in order to actually log in, or the servers go down, like I mean, if it's like I could pick up the Switch and play the Pokemon games or Dead Cells or Witcher 3 at a whim, right? The Switch isn't going to suddenly turn on like, oh, I have to do a factory reset right now, and you have to reinstall the game. Ooh. But I do feel that sorry, seriously, always online easily interrupts a solo experience.
Well, is that just for the server maintenance? Because and the queuing up thing. Because like I think that's like early bird things. Because I would expect that their desire is to have a game like Warframe, which is on all the time. Basically, like Warframe doesn't really have server issues unless it's like a really big launch.
Uh, so the thing with Warframe is it's not always talking to the server. Pardon me. Sorry, I've clearly had too much pop. It's not always talking to servers, whereas TemTem is always communicating like, oh, this person is here on the world, this person is there on the world. It's more of a TemTem is the equivalent of always being in the relay, right? And the relay requires an actual server to translate into Warframe terms. But I think that maybe you should be able to go and explore the world in TemTem. But if the servers go down, it shouldn't interrupt what you're doing in the game, right? Maybe you should still be able to capture TemTem or whatever. And then when the servers come back online, it's like, hey, look, we caught these TemTem. But yeah.
Well, like how big of like a from a developer's point of view, how big of an investment would that require? Because I think that I've often wondered when it came to games like Warframe or other live service games like we talked about previously, with laws, it's like it would be great if those games could like once they shut down still live on through like either like server code or as offline games. But the thing is, like an offline game is way different than a live service game. Like I don't think that you don't just convert, like it's like, oh, here, download this live service game. You can just like download it right now as a like an offline game. Like I don't think it works that way. Or does
But the
it?
big thing is Diablo 3, right? So when Diablo 3 first launched, it was one of the major titles at the time that came up with this whole always online bullshit, right? I had no problem with it, right? Because I played World of Warcraft for God knows how long, a subscription-based game, which made sense. It always had to be online because, it's MMO. But Diablo 3 didn't make a whole lot of sense of being always online. But if they're able to do a Switch port of the game that you can go play out in the street where there's no internet, or you can play on a PlayStation 4 that again is not hooked up to the internet, then why is the PC version always online? Right? It is a conceptual design choice at the beginning. Like you're making an architectural design choice always online. Right? Now, the upside of always online is you can protect the security of the data. So you can make sure that every TemTem is legitimately captured. Because if the servers go offline and you're allowed to like fiddle with the data, oh look, I caught this amazing, like Pokemon equivalent. Oh, I caught this shiny Mewtwo with perfect stats.
Ooh.
Oh, how lucky was I? Ooh, it's just not gonna fucking happen, is it? Everyone in the world has fucking Mewtwo in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And it's like, wait, Mewtwo's not in the game. It's like, ooh,
Yeah, no.
So, yeah.
No, I can see that like a really important element towards like live service games as compared to like solo play is that generally I don't think anyone gives a fuck about what you do with your solo game. Like if you cheat the heck out of your solo game, it's like who cares? It's like it's an offline cartridge. It doesn't interact with anything. Like maybe right now with more like when you have like these trophy systems. But I remember back in the day, we would just like we would have that friend that would have like the Nintendo DS, like the old Nintendo DS, the old version. And he would have all the cheats on it. And he was like, whenever it would seem like, what kind of legendary Pokemon do you want today? And I was like, well, what kinds do you have? And like you would trade all these legendary Pokemon there and be like, haha, I got all of them. It's like no one cares at that point. But when it comes to like an online live service game, especially when we were talking with Lion about like the auction house and stuff like that, like, oh boy, like if there was any hope for the auction house, then like offline play and cheats, that would just crumble it because everyone would have the most insane shit.
Well, I mean, if everyone had, so if it was easy to cheat and hack and so on and so forth, th- there would be no use of the auction houses. Like,
No.
oh, you want me to pay money to have that? Oh, no, I just give it to myself. You
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So, one question I have
Mhm.
is, how do you feel about the fact that it's a $30, you said dollar, didn't you? It's $30 game,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the ability to buy cosmetics in the game is so difficult because you have to farm like nuts to get enough
Mhm.
money, enough Hanson to actually buy any of the cosmetics.
See, I like this is really interesting because I don't feel like this is a live service game, and let me like explain that in the sense of like I know it's online and I know there are other people, but because it has such a semblance to Pokemon, I just feel like I'm playing a Pokemon game, but then with like actual people online. Like it feels as though like Pokemon got their shit sorted of actually having network things that work and that aren't like from 10 years ago. And like I'm just playing my game, but then I see other people around. So I don't feel that bad about an upfront cost because it's like it's even cheaper than Pokemon and this thing is actively being developed upon. But then when you start
Sorry,
talking about
that wasn't my point. My
yeah,
point
no,
was
no,
you bought the game
mm-hmm.
and then you had to wait forever before you could do any of the cool shit.
Yeah,
Like
no, that's what I was getting to is that like it feels when I think about it, like oh shit, that's pretty cool. But when we start mentioning that hey, it's a live service game, and like as live service games do, like they have a way to like they do it through cosmetics, which I think is the most moral approach, to do it, to like have the monetization thing in there. Then
no,
you start.
that's not what I meant. So I'm glad I tried. Okay, my clarification, right?
Mm-hmm,
Star Wars Battlefront 2,
mm-hmm,
right? Super duper elite edition,
mm-hmm,
£80. You had to play a minimum of 40 hours to unlock Darth Vader,
mm-hmm.
right? But I just paid 80 quid. Why do I have to play for 40 hours before I can play Darth Vader? Right?
Yeah.
That's the question. I've
Well,
just spent
I find that with a playable character as Darth Vader, like that is a playable character. Like I would care about that as well. I think cosmetics wise, like I don't mind. It's just the way you look, and like I think that there is definitely something to be said about the economy. It sucks that Lion isn't here right now because he was talking about how the economy would be better when like content that is promised is going to be added in, where it would be easier to earn your money in game. But cosmetics are like they need to keep this game alive anyway. Anyhow, if they don't do it through cosmetics, if there's no way to like buy money to buy cosmetics, like what else are you gonna buy? And like if that's not in there, then they can never like push this game forward past like 2 years at most. Because how are they gonna get how are they gonna get the money? DLCs maybe?
yeah, they could do DLCs. That's what Destiny 2 does.
Yeah, but
You
Destiny
know?
2 also does microtransactions.
Fair point. Okay, fair point. Like the whole point I was trying to come across is that it makes the economy feel very lopsided. Like if you as Lion said, if you have to spend 4 hours grinding to get enough money to buy one piece of cosmetic equipment, cosmetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
One cosmetic, you know, that's at the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
How bad is it towards the end? Do I have to do 80 hours to buy one cosmetic on the last island of the game? It gives people the false sense of security or therefore lack of. Because, it might be it's still 4 hours for the very end. But I'm thinking as a new player experience, I wouldn't want to commit that kind of grind to a cosmetic item at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, me neither. But it depends on like what kind of content is still locked away, which is still coming up. Like, I think one thing which I think is really important is I would never accept this argument when it comes to something like Anthem, to say like, oh, that's just still coming up. But this game is very clearly marked as early access. So I think that it's perfectly right to just take this as like they have a system in mind which isn't fully developed yet. So they don't have. We do have the return right now. Here we
I'm
go.
gonna see if I can get my phone with you guys.
Here we go. We're back. Cool.
There's a little bit of echo.
Yeah, hold me 1 second.
Right. Let's see how this works. Boom.
Trying to figure out how to make my headphones actually receive from Discord. It won't work.
Does it help if we're talking?
Let me see. No. Let me see.
Experiencing technical difficulties right here.
Yeah, it's like it's remembering my PC settings even though I'm connected to my phone, which is weird.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready?
I think so.
Okay, we can't hear ourselves, so I think we're good.
Hell yeah. Are
Cool.
we good?
Is it working or no?
It's working.
Can
We
you hear
can
us?
Hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. We're good. We're good.
That's
Let's go.
Yay!
Okay, Lion, jump in. What the crap we were spewing out?
Yeah, the monetary system. Like, how do you feel about the in-game currency requiring you, as Drew says, like 4 hours of gameplay of grind time to acquire one piece of cosmetic?
So I don't mind it so much, purely because we only have, once again, half the game in, so I don't feel comfortable making a full judgment on how expensive those cosmetics are in game, because right now, right? So I think the highest TemTem that you can release for cash is if you catch like a Shun or Shun, whatever. I still can't pronounce some of these names. That's another issue I have with the game. I can't pronounce half the names. It's like 328 pan sun if one's released, right? So that's like the highest value one right now, and that's only at like half the level. So if we're getting up to like close to like level 80, 90 TemTem towards end game maybe that you're capturing and releasing, those scale with their level. So technically there could be a ton of different ways, you know. I think the revenue will ramp as it gets closer to end game, like true end game.
Yeah. Well,
but does it not feel like a bad idea to make it so that cosmetics are only suitable for true end game?
I don't mind it so much.
Yeah,
I think most, for me, like, yeah, I can't speak to most players, but for me, like, if I'm playing through the full game, the last thing on my mind is getting a cosmetic midway through the game.
Yeah, I feel the same. I know some people deeply care. Like, we do have this statement within Warframe where it's like fashion frame is endgame. But like for me, my biggest question comes up when it's like, well, is it a problem? Let's say yes, it is a problem that cosmetics like should be easier to acquire. It's like, where are they going to put the monetization gate on? Like, where else would you want to put it on? Because like, I think that they're gonna need to put it on somewhere, and like then I would rather have it on cosmetics.
Yeah, that's definitely where I prefer it to be.
How about you, Drew? Right, you're nodding in agreement.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking, like, you know, where would I prefer it? But again, the cosmetics have to be it really depends. You know, hell, if you could actually dress up your TemTem, that would be something I'd be totally down for. Right? The thing that you're looking at the most.
Oh yeah, I don't think Pokemon has had that. Do they?
No, I think it does. I think the latest Pokemon. I think you can put like hats and things on your Pokemon, I think, or something. I don't know.
Oh, nice. So one thing that you mentioned, Lion, in the chat was the interesting development which Crema, the developers of TemTem, recently did, where they banned 900 plus people, and I've seen some tweets around where people were very supportive of this because they said we have a zero tolerance policy towards cheaters. If we catch you cheating, you're banned without any further like dialogue.
Yeah, like no
afterwards.
ban appeals.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
They did walk that back a little bit. They did open up ban appeals, but they did verify that every instance was true cheating. So
Mhm.
like, I think the best way to do it is what they did, where it was just a wave of 900 people banned, because then that makes people not clue into, the people that make cheats or make hacks. It makes it harder to find out what triggered it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like what let them detect it. And from what I saw, what they were doing is they were like getting people were glitching into areas that are not even opened yet and farming TemTem that are not even released and then selling them on the market.
Mhm.
Like it was proliferating some things that are not even fully released yet and not fully tested, and they're putting them in there. So like, and for them to say like, you're doing something wrong, you shouldn't be doing that. Like I don't have a problem with like something on that to that extreme. Like you shouldn't be going over there trying to sell these things and make a huge profit in the game from content that other players can't access. Like you're well aware that's something you shouldn't be doing. Like I think that's beyond just a simple like exploit that gets detected. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's actively like malicious intent, like for them to make a profit and get ahead of other players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think they drew the line in a good way, like having hacked Lumas and hacked all these things, because Lumas have better stats when you first get them, which makes the breeding process early or easier, and also they sell for more. Like all those things that they detected, I think were good stages to set a firm stance on. So I don't have an issue with it, and I think mainly the loudest voices I saw were a couple that did get banned, and likely were ones that were doing it. So you know what I mean? I don't
Mhm.
see an issue around it for the most part.
Right. Well, there is of course like the question that some people have posed where it's like, hey, if there is an exploit in the game, um, how like on which side does the blame fall
Mm-hmm.
for the exploit? Like, isn't it the fault of the developer that the exploit is there, and can you then fault the player for making use of it because it's something that they can make use of? And like when you portray the idea of like someone glitching into an area, forming TemTem, and then selling them to like get an edge, like that sounds kind of cruel. But let's think about like, let's say, speed runs where a common practice with speedruns is that
Mm-hmm.
people will use exploits to like slim off times, and like that's a generally like accepted thing, which in some parts of the speedrun
Right.
community is being done. And when
But
you're
does
not,
that affect other players?
yeah, well, like that's the question when it comes to like, okay, so let's say that you're selling all these Temtem to people to make the money, then like yeah, like you affect other players. But what if you do it to like just get the Temtem? Like you find this exploit and you're like, oh my god, I kind of like cool. There's new things here. Let me like farm that just for myself. It's like if you have it yourself, does that affect other players?
Right. I think I'd be really interested to see like what percentage of the people that did get banned from engaging that exploit were the ones that were selling things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that was the biggest thing that they were targeting. Because it was like
Yeah.
at one point during the day, the market was flooded with like
Mm-hmm.
Hocus, because that's who got discovered as being in this one patch of grass that people can get to,
Yeah.
and it was like flooded with that for a couple hours. And then
Mm-hmm.
after they issued the whole ban wave, you don't see those anymore. So like I don't know if that's what they were specifically targeting, the players that did that, because they said they looked at each as a case by case basis. So I
Yeah.
think like if somebody farmed it for themselves and then didn't sell it, I don't know if they got you know
The
chastised
same
for that.
level. They
Yeah,
probably didn't. They probably did get like, I don't know, maybe a temporary ban or something like that. But it's
yeah,
just like, you knew of something that was exploitative by nature. I mean, I've seen it in so many games. World of Warcraft, Warframe, frick, you just name it, and it's everything. Every game has had something like this, right?
of
Heroes of the
course.
Storm, everything. And it's gonna happen. I do think that one thing that this conversation has actually made me think of, the reason why they banned in a wave, I don't know if this is common knowledge, but I think this gets more attention. If it's
Mm-hmm.
instead of like we're gonna nip this in the bud, we're gonna nip this in the bud. If they let it fester first and then they clean up, it gets more attention. Because okay, so instead of like one person every minute getting banned,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually now 1,000 people have just been banned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so
I can definitely see it as a great like PR move in the sense of like we really don't stand for this. Don't try this at our game because like we won't fuck around. However, like one thing which I am a little bit concerned about when it comes to like the way that they're handling bans, and like I think it's a good thing that they updated where they said like we will like enter into dialogue because they first said that they wouldn't. Is like when it comes to like a smaller like player base, when it comes to like a smaller developer, there are certain things that you can do, and there are certain things which are great things that you can do because you have a smaller game. And that is something like treating every single possible case of a cheat use or like a program use or like a violation. Like you can treat every single one of those cases and review them closely and then be like, well, this is definitively banned. This is definitively banned. This is like a bit of a questionable case. Like you can go over it. However, what you find when it comes when the game gets bigger, and this recently was an example of within World of Warcraft with Luke from Linus Tech Tips who had this, but undoubtedly a bunch more people have had this. Like you have such a large player base, you'll have bots that look for like certain activities, and in this case, Luke was banned from World of Warcraft, like I think for like half a year or a year or so, because they detected another program running, like they detected a secondary piece of software running. And when he engaged in like the ticket, like, well, what was it? What happened? They wouldn't give him any details because we don't discuss this because otherwise you could cheat it. Well, he says like I have bought every single thing of Blizzard ever since I started, and like I'd never cheat. Like the only possible thing which might be was that some work related thing was running, but they would never, like there was no way to get in touch, and only because they were talking about this frequently on their podcast on like Linus Tech Tips, over 10 million subscribers YouTube channel. Only then, like after like he had like a Blizzard rep reach out, and that person wouldn't help him because like when he looked into it, he was like, oh yeah, we don't discuss this thing. And only the week after, like someone came through and said, okay, yeah, no, this is wrong, and then they turn it back. And that's something where it's like, when it comes to like a really small player size, when it comes to like a small game initially, this is something which you can do, and I really like the idea of like we don't fuck around. However, I think that it's really important that you have the dialogue open for like bans, especially because if you like expand the game out and then you have bots maybe making mistakes, it sucks so hard if you are out there and you spend money, time, you spend everything in this game, and all of a sudden you're banned and you have no way of appealing, or people won't even react to it. Like that really, really reeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I think one of the main reasons that they don't discuss that, right, is because if even if it's a non-malicious program, that's still some sort of trigger that sets off their cheat detection. So like anybody that is experiencing making those cheats could then look at that software, see what would trigger that, and be like, hey, this part's in mine. I need to get rid of that. Like, I think that's the reason that they're not transparent about that. I mean, I think from a development standpoint, that would make the most sense to me. But at the same time, like, if they detect that the program is not a malicious one, they should tell the player it's not a malicious one and unban them, like, immediately. So, like I said, there's definitely two sides to that.
I disagree. I don't think it is fair to, oh, you have this program, therefore we're just going to ban you. Like, you should be able to tell whether or not your data is being manipulated by an external source. That is the bannable offense, in my opinion. For example, I didn't know this until recently. Do you play Destiny 2 at all?
Yeah, I play a ton of it.
Right, you play a ton of it. Right, so I assume you do like a lot of the PvP side of Destiny 2.
Yeah, I play a fair bit of PvP. I'm more heavily involved in the PvE aspect and like speed runs and stuff like that. Like I play a lot of that stuff, but I have tons of friends that are really active in the PvP community, like high ranking up there. So I've heard a lot of stuff from them.
So do you know about the whole exposed IP address thing with the PvP?
Yeah, I mean, it also comes into play with the fact that they don't have dedicated servers still for PvP, which is absolutely blows my mind.
So, Michelle, for your benefit, do you know about this?
No, I don't, but please also explain for
people.
Okay,
so for everyone's benefit, with the PvP in Destiny 2, especially since it's gone free to play, PvP is done via direct connection between client to client. So one player is the host, everyone else is connecting to that host via their direct IP address, which means that if you can find out who is on the enemy team, you can then DDoS them.
Yep.
Right? You can do all sorts of nasty shit to them. You can throttle their connection to you. You can do and give yourself an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had my
So,
friends complain about it actively when they're playing at high competitive levels.
yep.
Yeah.
So what I have heard is it's good to get yourself a VPN, because then if you're getting attacked, you can just disconnect from the VPN, right?
Yeah.
At least it is not your home internet connection,
Mhm.
right? Now, there are plenty of games out there that if they detect you're on a VPN,
Yeah.
they'll just flat out ban you,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
So if you think about it in that regard, right? Why are you banning me? I'm not doing anything. Like I'm just playing the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? I need the VPN to protect me from bullshit like
Yeah.
Destiny 2 PvP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well,
if I'm just playing
Mhm.
on, for example, I don't know if World of Warcraft. Let's just hypothetical big AAA title just detects you're on a VPN, banned.
Well, like even with competitive play, or like I can imagine if I were to stream Destiny now PvP, I would definitely like not do that. Like, because like if you stream something and people have your IP address, like there have been multiple cases where people are using that to like DDoS you to take down the stream. So like
Yep.
I would never do that now. Now that I know that that's a possibility, so like maybe with a VPN, that would be a way that I would go about it. But the thing is also VPNs are becoming way more mainstream, especially with like the bullshit in Europe with Article 13. I expect people were to pick them up more. But even like if you watch anything online related, like you will have heard of NordVPN or private internet access or any of those VPNs, which have been like all over the place. And people are using them, and they're like, yeah, there's reasons to use them. So, like, let's say that I always use my VPN on my computer while I'm working, and then one day I just forget to turn them off when I'm like, oh, well, let's go play a game. It's like you get banned for that. Like, I also think like one important thing which you highlighted, Lion, where it was like, well, if we give away the program that used that like triggered this thing, triggered the ban, then like hackers can figure out what the program does to like improve their programs. Well, what about the other users which are innocent, which are using that same program? Like, let's say that
Yep.
it's a common work program, and the first person gets banned, and they're not being told about it. There are maybe hundreds or thousands of people which are using that at the same time that will also be banned because they don't know. So I think at that point, like the innocent people shouldn't have to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are all fair points. I mean, it's a very hard and delicate situation to be able to tackle those things because of how different everybody plays and the circumstances from the games. Like, the whole thing with Destiny is entirely on the developer's side. Like, that is their problem, and they need to address it. And we've been asking them to address it for years. Like, there is no reason in 2020 that you should not be running a PvP game on dedicated servers. There's absolutely no reason.
Unless you're a live service, unless you're a live service PvE game like Destiny or Warframe, you will do it this way. Because Warframe has the same problems. They also don't have dedicated servers.
It doesn't make any sense to me why they go why they go client to client. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So my next point I want to bring up, the whole, I don't know if you'll be able to confirm whether or not this is factual or not. Pokemon suing TemTem.
I haven't actually heard that they were suing them partially because the game is coming to Switch.
Right. Okay. I've seen like articles. This was weeks ago when we originally tried to sort this episode out. But weeks ago I saw articles stating that Pokemon were suing TemTem. My question here is, do you think that there is enough of a case for Pokemon to make suing TemTem?
I mean, the fact that they were transparent enough about that their biggest inspiration is Pokemon, but they have actively changed a lot of the elements. I think in a court of law, I think it wouldn't hold up.
Yeah,
I think there's a case for them to I guess go after it. I guess they're super protective of, you know, their dominant stranglehold on the monster catching genre.
mm-hmm.
Like that's what it really is. Like there was even a game that I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm like blanking, but Pokemon is literally inspired from that game.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot remember the name of it.
Well,
It was
like
like older than
mm-hmm.
Pokemon, and literally Pokemon adopted those same kind of like battling systems and everything into what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a bunch of other games that came out, you know, like Yokai Watch and stuff like that have come out since
mm-hmm.
then, and those didn't really get into legal trouble. So like, the only reason I would ever see Pokemon going after this, because maybe they're a little bit afraid that they're actually improving on some systems. That's my biggest. I don't think a case would actually hold up.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have enough of a difference in what they're doing and how they operate it that I think they'd be fine. But I could see why Pokemon might do something like that. But it's weird to me if it's coming to Switch, why they would sue something that they're launching on their platform.
So one of the very things that I find super interesting about US law is that if there is a questionable incident of, you know, this thing was happening. So let's say, for example, you know, TemTem was copying Pokemon, right? It was breach of copyright on Pokemon. What you call it? And Pokemon, the owners of Pokemon's intellectual property did not sue. That could be used as an example of, well, if they didn't sue this company for doing something, then why are they suing us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely a case. Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is, regardless of whether or not how, yeah, okay, it's not really a rip-off Pokemon. If such an event is true, that Pokemon are suing TemTem, do you think this is just legal red tape to make sure that there are no future problems for any future titles? And basically, the company owning Pokemon would just lowball it. Just go, yeah.
I didn't even think about it that way, but you could entirely be right. That would make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. I think that, like, based on how they've presented and been so transparent about it, like, that it is, like, a inspired by Pokemon case. Like, they will have, like, done their due diligence on, like, what they can be sued for and what they can't be sued for. Otherwise, like, it's a pretty, like, interesting endeavor if you're not doing your due diligence about that and still stating that, like, this is inspired by Pokemon. At the same time, I think it's also, like, a Fortnite PUBG, like, kind of claim, where PUBG tried to like own the genre because like they were the popularizer of it, even though it's like a type of genre, and that's also something that I was wondering about, where it's like with like the mainstream popularity of Pokemon, like a lot of these things feel like very much inspired by Pokemon, maybe like even taken out of Pokemon, which of course it is, but isn't that just because Pokemon has been so dominant, pretty much had like a public monopoly when it comes to like the public domain? Like people feel that the only kind of game creature capture game there is Pokemon, and Pokemon is that thing, and like anything that looks like it is Pokemon. But actually, like, we've just only been having like one game of that genre for the past 20 years, not realizing that it was a genre instead of just one game.
I mean there's other games in the genre, but they always fall away so quickly because like you said, Pokemon does essentially have a monopoly over that genre. And you know, for me, I'm a firm believer in that competition breeds creativity. Right? And in my honest opinion, I might get a ton of flack from the Pokemon community, but Pokemon's gotten incredibly stale to me.
Oh yeah.
Like incredibly stale. And there was that whole controversy around the low res textures, which I even look at Sword and Shield right now and how it looks graphically, and I don't know how people can say that it looks beautiful. Like I think it looks like a mess. Like the textures are way lower res than what that system can clearly handle with like things like Breath of the Wild and everything. Like there could have been a lot more work that went into the UI design and everything overall in that. And it feels very much like it was either ported over or it was quickly slapped together to make money.
Yeah, well,
That's my firm belief as like an artist. I looked at it and there wasn't that much of a visual improvement to me over previous games, even though it was made in 3D. You know, like.
Well, like
I have.
Go ahead.
I have heard the rumor that this was originally meant to be a 3DS game, and it got ported over to the Switch because the Switch was the big thing that had just come out. And you can see that with other Pokemon games. I think Black and White was a 3DS game, and it's just like this could have just easily been a DS game.
Well, what you also had was that they tried the Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu thing with the Switch, where it was like the motion controls of like throwing the Pokeball, and that just, in terms of their regular sales, like wasn't a success. So if they didn't release this game on the Switch, then the Switch would have been this major, well-selling platform that wouldn't have a successful Pokemon game on it. Which would also be a reason of them rushing it. But because of like the state that Pokemon is in, where they like the visuals aren't the greatest right now. The Dexit thing happened. There's been a lot of controversy around the DLC thing going on. Like, is this maybe potentially like a prime time for TemTem to step in, and maybe also one of the reasons why it is actually like catching on quite a bit more than any previous attempts at like games in this genre. Isn't this the prime time for like people to like kind of open up their hearts from like the Pokemon franchise and be like, let's try this out and see how this thing does, and maybe does it better than Pokemon ever did?
Definitely, because this is one of the reasons that I got so interested in it. Like I'm a huge Pokemon. I still have my first full 8 collections of original cards like in a binder put away.
Ooh,
like I still have those like as a nostalgia thing. Like Pokemon will always be like this big thing, but for a game like this, when I just try it, to immediately break through that nostalgia barrier and for me to enjoy it, that's a huge thing in my opinion. Like they've hit something with that. And I think it's perfectly acceptable for people to branch out and just experience other games. Like it's not in a way going to directly hurt Pokemon. Like for anybody to think that this is a threat to Pokemon, I definitely don't think that's a thing. I think if anything, it'll make them improve and you'll get a better game out of it. That's the only way I see that going, because there's no way a company like Nintendo or Game Freak will let that IP just die. There's no way.
No.
And they can only get more benefit by making a better game. Like, sure, it might cut into profits initially, but once they have the infrastructure, models, systems set up for that kind of thing in a better format, they literally can run even faster, with the resources they have. So like, I think there's plenty of space in the genre for these games to compete, and I would welcome more to play in those kind of things, because at a certain point, you play Pokemon and I'm just like, I'm really tired of catching Squirtle. I'm really, really tired of having this. Always looking in that instant. Oh, look, I'm.
Yay!
All right. Internet is back on.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so like, there's definitely. I don't see there being a big problem here, and I definitely think people need to expand and just give the game a shot.
Yeah.
Because it's cost also, like it's $35 USD, I think, to play the game. I think they said it's going to get it more expensive when it comes in full launch. I think that's what they said. So
I like that.
So playing it now and being part of the development cycle and providing that feedback and everything, I think is a good thing for people to just get in and try it and play it now.
Yeah.
But even when it fully releases, they're not doing like multiple versions like Pokemon does, where you need to buy 2 full games to be able to get everything. And then they release the special combined version later on. And then now you have DLC and all this kind of stuff. Whereas TemTem is, hey, pay me $35 and you get the full game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they have a monetary edge, I think, over Pokemon also in this regard.
Well, it depends on how they move forward with their monetization features, because like
Yeah.
we were discussing a little bit earlier when it comes to like the monetization of cosmetics, like they need microtransactions in there, like if you want to run a live service, which is and like this
Yeah.
is something where I get confused by a lot, because like this feels to me like it's just a Pokemon game kind of that
Yeah.
I'm buying, which is just online. It doesn't feel like a live service to me. Whereas if you come up to me with Destiny and said pay $60 and then you have this live service game with like paid DLC and paid microtransactions, I was like, yeah, no. But like if they are to go ahead with like they need to sustain themselves over the long
Yeah.
run, because this initial buy period, like they're gonna have initial sales, but that won't last for like the longest period unless you want this game to run like for 2-3 years. So like it really depends on how they do the microtransactions. Like if the like cosmetics grind will become maybe even tougher or like easier, and then if they're going to do the quality of life payments, like how much that affects it. Like if that's going to be like, I think that with Destiny, with paid DLC and microtransactions, like it makes sense that right now it's free to play, because it didn't feel like a fair deal to pay $60 and then also like pay for DLCs and microtransactions. So if they keep it like the way that it is right now and they have a full game at $60 and like it doesn't feel as intrusive, I love it. But if they change up their microtransactions to be a little bit more aggressive, which I can imagine them doing because you're not going to have that many initial sales, then having a $60 price tag on it or an increased price tag will feel different. But I really like what they're doing now.
Yeah, I think a big aspect also that people don't look at is there is cosmetics, right? Just for the player model themselves. But don't forget they also have a housing system coming,
Ooh,
right?
yeah.
Where you can fully customize your player house and everybody can visit your house and see what it looks like. So that's a huge area for cosmetics to be a purchasable thing. Like things you'll earn in game, sure. I'm sure there's furniture, a ton of things you can earn through game, through like the weekly rewards. I'm sure those will be things, but there will also definitely be purchasable cosmetics for houses. Like Elder Scrolls Online does that kind of thing, you know, where it's you build your own little house and you have all these kind of things. I think that's the route they'll mainly go in. I don't think those quality of life will be as prevalent as everybody's so worried about. I think the big sticking points are going to be character cosmetics and housing cosmetics, and I think those alone will fuel a huge portion of the development costs.
I hope so. I really do. I think that would be like yeah. I think that it has worked in previous games, and I hope that it will work so, because people love the cosmetics and people also love giving back to a game that they really enjoy in monetary value. So like that's great. I like that. So with our main question being of will TemTem conquer Pokemon? Of course, I don't think that it will completely take over Pokemon, but I think that this is the first time that I really feel that we have something that could be a really true competitor, which doesn't necessarily take it doesn't compete with Pokemon on the same level, in the sense of like it doesn't release on a handheld as like the exact same way. This releases on Steam as an online game, and I think it suits it really well. I like it.
I think so too.
I
wonder how it's going to play in the Switch being online, but that's another question.
Oh yeah.
I think that it has a lot of potential to be. God, I think it has a lot of potential to give Pokemon a run for its money, but the biggest thing is that they shouldn't be over ambitious too soon and bite off more than they can chew.
Yeah. Well, speaking of one more thing, which is hard to pronounce, the names.
Yeah, Kodiak has had problems with them. I've had problems with them, like just pronouncing some of them. We've gotten flack for the way we pronounce them. I don't know how to pronounce half the names in the game, I'd say, and we kind of just go with what we sounds phonetically correct, you know, like.
No, I will not name the professor. I just call him Professor, and I just nickname all my Pokemon into like George or Gregory or Matthew, and like I'll be fine. But yeah, like oh my god, like the names are so and like there's a lot of getting used to with things. Like I remember the first time I said I'm gonna become a TemTem master. Like okay, here's another TemTem. Okay, like it needs to get used to, but that's fine. But then like you have some names which use very interesting like spellings where I'm like, right, I don't know, like where does this inspiration come from? What kind of language does it? Do these things originate from?
They're a Spanish studio, right?
Oh yeah,
they're from Spain. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah, they're from Spain. So I think a lot of it takes, from Portuguese, from Spain, from France. I think those are the general tones I'm getting, because even like some of the vibes and some of the music I'm getting, like Dr. Hamijo, who's like a character later in the game that you encounter. His music feels very like chaotic French. Like it's interesting. Like I think they're taking from the general like European vibe, like of different countries' cultures. I think that's what they're doing.
The one game the music stood out to me was Final Fantasy 13. It's just like there's a lot of violin here.
Well, now that you said that it's got European influences, I guess I don't have anything that I can say now on the pronunciation being European. Dang it. But yeah, I mean, it could also be something where it's a getting used to thing, because like what the heck was a Pikachu like 20 years ago the game came out. It's like a lot of a lot of the Pokemon names are very much Japanese. Even though we have had a lot of translations, like seriously, it makes if you look at like the Japanese names of some Pokemon, like fuck me, like wow,
they're crazy.
They change so much, but still, like a lot of these like Japanese terms we have gotten used to. So maybe this is something that we'll get used to. But I think the anime helped a lot when it came to the correct pronunciation, where because like you hear them say Pikachu in like the anime, you know how it's pronounced.
Which I think they're making a play for an anime. I don't know if you saw their tweet that they're tweeting towards Netflix. Yeah. They made that trailer, and then they're also trying to get on board with Netflix to make an animated series.
I mean, Netflix will just make anything.
It's true.
Yeah, but that's how we end up with like Lost in Space, and The Witcher,
all great.
And Castlevania. Oh my god, Castlevania's coming out soon. Sorry, I got distracted. What?
They definitely still have a huge roadmap though that they have to tackle within a year. It's pretty big.
I have to say that I am really glad that like they're releasing this, number one, as early access and cheaper than like the full price thing, and that it is a playable game. Like seriously, I think that for me, if you come up to me and give me roadmap bullshit, I don't believe it in 1 second. Like look at Anthem, look at all these games that brought in roadmaps that never worked. But because like this is something you can play, you can put hours into, even though it's not completely finished, you can put a lot of hours into and just have an enjoyable experience. And it's like half the price maybe right now. It's like, yeah, sure, I don't mind when it comes out. It's like even maybe like even if stuff comes out like later than you imagined, I don't mind. I have fun here. I like that.
Yeah.
So cool, right. I think we're gonna call it here because Lion is very busy and
I am.
will be very soonly getting ready for work.
Yeah.
So it's been absolutely lovely having you on the show. Thank you so much for teaching us the many things of TemTem.
That's our goal.
Yeah. Sorry for like the internet interruptions and things. I'll try not to do it again. Where can people find you?
So you guys can find us as a team. We're Legion Gaming on YouTube. Where you can find the @ Unite the Legion. That's our Twitter tag. I'm also at TheLividLion. So I'm on Twitter as well on my own account. So we have multiple places you can find us. We are very active on Twitter. We're very active on YouTube, and we're getting into Twitch a lot more now, where we have a streamer basically streaming every day of the week. So playing some version of some game. TemTem is a big focus, but we have other focuses that we're branching out to as well. So that's also Legion Gaming. So you can find us there.
Cool. Awesome. Right. Michelle, are we going to hand on to... Why did you post that 3 times?
Because people are more likely to click it if it's in there 3 times.
Fair
Studies
point.
say.
Okay. Right. So should we find someone to raid then?
Well, let us first close out by saying thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you around next time. Bye. So that our viewers that are listening on this on YouTube or listening on this on like the podcast platforms are not like confused. Like, what the hell is this rating thing? It's a Twitch thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Sorry. My bad.
See you guys around. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. All right.